Hi, I'm a dork. I got my GoPro out here. um, I got a new toy, and I wanted to share it with you. And I figured I better do that pretty quick before I wreck it. Um, I gotta tell you, before I show you, I need to tell you straight up. I love my wife. I have an awesome wife. I have a very generous and encouraging woman that is encouraging me to pursue this YouTube habit, and I don't know, just like to see me get better at things. I guess I don't know if I'm doing that, but so about a week ago, this shows up in the mail. And for those of you who don't know what this is called the quadcopter. This, if this was owned by the U.S. military, it'd be called a drone, and would have a machine gun mounted to it. But this is just a small. This is what this is a Walkera X350. It's a Walkera QR X350, and there's three major players in this size of quadcopter. There's the Blade X350, or the Blade QR350, the Blade 350, the Walkera, and the DJI. And the DJI is the highest price point, and based on what I've learned over the last week, if you're a novice flyer, don't get this one. It's not a question of whether or not you will crash. It's a matter of when, and really it's a question of when in your first flight are you going to drive this thing into the ground. So this has a couple of neat features. Well, most of these things do nowadays. You can fly this thing line of sight, just by with a regular radio, by just flying the thing around, and hope you're good enough to keep it out of the dirt. There's also a GPS hold feature here that there's, depending on where you're at and whether you're getting a signal from the 28 or so satellites that are orbiting the Earth in synchronous orbit. This will pick up those satellites, and the satellites will help control the flight of the machine. And it also has a panic mode or a return to home mode, where if it gets away from you and you can't get it back, or you can't see it anymore, it decides to grow a mind of its own and take off on you, you can flip a switch and it will come back. As long as you wait for the GPS signal to come on, it will fly off and fly back and land right back where you took it off from. Pretty cool. So I got this thing and proceeded to crash it immediately. I mean, almost immediately. And I realized that, I'm watching these guys on YouTube fly this thing. They're making it look easy. And it's because they're not newbies. They're not dumbasses like me. And this, of the three, this is probably going to be the hardest one to fly. So if you're looking for a better price point, DJI is going to run you around $700-800 ready to fly. This one was about $400, and the Blade is right around $450-500. So this is the lowest price point, but it's the hardest to fly. And by the time you factor in, you're going to break props, you're going to break legs. Like I broke this one this morning. The second flight out, I ripped the freaking legs right out of the body. So it's going to need a new body soon. So I figured I'd get a video in before I actually turn this thing into scrap. But everything's readily available, and stuff's really not that expensive. But I'll take it out and see if I can't crash it for you. And I'll fire up the GoPro, and you can see what I see. But I saw this and I thought, man, this would be a great video platform. And it has provisions for a mount here. You can mount a GoPro on this thing, and that's, I want to get good at flying this before I mount my $400 GoPro onto this thing. I don't want to crash my GoPro. So, but just like anything new, there's a learning curve. So, let's go fly it, shall we? Or I should say, let's go crash it, shall we? put in my Dork apparatus. Yeah. All right, come on, let's go.
Pretty windy. I just turned it around so I could see the lights on the back. It's in go to home right now. It's gonna land itself. Look at that. It's in GPS lock right now. That's just ready to climb. Watch. Didn't crash it.
Well, there you have it. Back in one piece. At least this flight came back in one piece. What you didn't see was me going for about a 5-minute flight and landing, coming back, check the video, realized that I didn't have an SD card in my GoPro. So I grabbed the SD card out of this camera and threw it in the GoPro, and I haven't even looked at it yet, but in about another 6-7 minutes of flight time. Got about 13 this morning. I flew it and I got about 13 minutes. I timed it. I flew it twice. I crashed it once and flew it a second time, and actually I flew it, then I crashed it, and then I fixed it, and then I just got unflying it again. But I got about 13 minutes of flight time, and I'm getting a little bit better at flying it on just regular standard mode. It's really delicate inputs. I guess it's a lot like flying a real plane. Very delicate inputs, otherwise the thing just and interesting story. Here's how I crashed it the first time. I mean, the first day I got it, I tipped it over a couple of times and just dropped it out of the sky from about 5 feet. Didn't really hurt it all that bad, but the first real big crash, you saw I did that rate of ascent. I think that's the coolest thing since banana bread. Just to shoot straight up in the air at, I don't know, you just gotta go 10, 15 feet a second. I mean, it just zooms up in the air. And that thing, I did that, and it was light today, a little bit breezy. I did that, and I started flying around. And I was probably, I don't know, 100 feet up. And I started flying around, and it just got away from me. So I went to the return to home feature. It's on this switch right here. All the way up is just standard flight mode, and with the firmware that's in this machine right now, it's really screwy, because you'd think, like driving a car, you'd make a right turn, you let go of the steering wheel comes back to center, the car comes back to center. Well, that's not the way this thing flies. If you put in right rudder, it goes right, even if you let go of the stick and the stick comes back to center, it keeps going right. So you got to put in left rudder to counteract that right. You get what I'm saying? It's flipping weird. But that's standard flight mode. I guess people like that. I hate it. It's like making a right-hand turn and then having to turn left to get it to go back straight. Stupid. But anyway, that's what happened. I got all kittywampus. Like, it was far enough up where I couldn't orient. I couldn't see the orientation of the machine. So I just went back to, return to home mode, and it flew over right to where I took off from. It was still up there about 100 feet. And I'm thinking it's going to start coming down. Well, it kept going up. It flew over to where, just above where I was at, about, like I said, about 70, 80 feet up in the air, and it just started going up. And I'm like, what the heck, So I'm backing out on the throttle, and when it's in return to home mode, it's relying on GPS. And the same thing with GPS hold. It wants to hold at a certain altitude and a certain location. You got satellites that are trying to, imagine the machine's on on 3 strings, 3 or 4 strings, like a marionette, and the satellites are trying to hold that position, and I'm down here on the ground messing with the inputs, you know. So I'm backing out of the throttle, and the satellites are telling the controllers to amp up the throttle. So it's trying to hold this altitude, and I'm backing out of the throttle. Well, it's up there 100 feet, and I'm fighting this thing, trying to bring it down. And I finally just said, screw it. And I just dumped zero throttle. And the thing fell like a rock, man. And when it did this. It inverted. And I'm like, oh, shit. I don't know anything about these things. I don't know how to uninvert a machine like this. So I did the only thing I thought I could do, and I put it in GPS hold. And I could hear, you know, by the time I did that, it was down far enough, because I couldn't even hear it when I did that, when I backed out of throttles. And by the time I flipped this thing to GPS mode, it was back in earshot, and I heard them engines flare up, and it's just rocketing towards the ground. So I just killed everything. I just turned the throttles off and let it fall, and I'm sitting there watching $400 fall out of the sky. And when you know it, I got that little tree over there, and that little half dead tree over there in the side of the yard, and it hit that tree. And when it did, there's these spinner nuts. They're like little bullets that go on the end. I just got nuts on them now. But it happened. One of those limbs caught one of the motors that turned counterclockwise. It spun that nut off. I lost the nut. The prop came off. I had to go to Home Depot and get metric bolts or metric nuts to bolt the thing back on. That was my first crash. Second crash, I put that thing in, returned to home, and I think I worn the battery down to the point where it just ran out, and it dropped out of the sky from about 60 feet. Straight down. It was coming down. And I had the controller like this, and I just grabbed it like this from the handle and, you know, turned my back and walked away. And I heard that thing coming down. I turned around and looked, and when I turned around and looked at it, it was 20 feet off the ground, and it was coming down so fast that I couldn't do anything. Boom! Hits the ground. You see all that hot glue? It ripped the bosses. These little thumb screws go into little brass inserts in the body, and it ripped them right out. And then this morning, I was out flying, and my neighbor, Ken, he come out to check out. He heard the thing buzzing around in the side lot over here, and he came out. I had an audience, and I'm flying the thing around, and I'm getting cocky now, because I'm impressing my neighbor. And I was getting cocky, and I had that thing into a full bank like this. It was banking so hard that I couldn't keep altitude. It just kept dropping and dropping. And instead of hitting return to mode and letting the GPS take over, I just pretty much cut the throttle and let it drop. And this thing broke back off. That ain't gonna do any more damage, but it shattered one of the legs. I got more legs coming from China, along with another set of spinner nuts. And what else I got coming? And I got the firmware cable coming so I can update to the latest version of the firmware. But God, yeah, boys and their toys, right? But someday this camera is going on a gyro stabilized gimbal on this machine or one like it. I'm gonna learn how to fly on this since this one's so hard to fly. And when we out and about out in the desert doing these little excursions into Suburban, I'll bring my gyrocopter, my little quadcopter with my GoPro, and get some aerial footage. Pretty cool. So I'd share that before I totally destroy this thing. So, yeah. Rate, comment, subscribe, and as always, have a splendid day. Bye.